The life story of Lao Tzu is a tapestry woven with threads of history, legend, and profound philosophical mystery. This is most apt for someone who is said to have shied away from interaction with civilization. Our earliest source comes from the 1st century BC, and the historian Sima Qian in his records of the Grand Historian, or Shiji. But even he, within this narrative, presented multiple conflicting accounts, expressing doubt about which, if any, were true. In his first account, Sima Qian reports that Lao Tzu was a contemporary of Confucius in around the 6th or 5th century BC. His personal name was said to be Li Er, or Li Dan. He was born in the village of Quyuan in the southern state of Qu, which would eventually be conquered at the end of the Warring States period in 221 BC, in what is now modern Luyi, Henan. He was a scholar, holding the esteemed position of Keeper of the Archives at the royal Zhou court. That was the Zhou territory in the centre that still held on to nominal power in this spring and autumn period of gradual disintegration. This role granted him broad access to the ancient classics. It is during this time that Confucius supposedly met with the older Lao Tzu. There are conflicting dates for this meeting. Sometime between 530 BC and 501 BC the two meet. And from this meeting we get this anecdote from Sima Qian in chapter 63 verse 4 of the records of the Grand Historian. Quote, Confucius went to Zhou intending to ask Lao Tzu about the rites. Lao Tzu said, "The men whom you speak of, their bones have already decayed, only their words remain. Also, when a gentleman encounters his time, he rides in a carriage. When he does not, he wanders about with dishevelled hair. I have heard that a good merchant hides his treasures as if he didn't have any. A gentleman of great virtue appears as if he were foolish. Abandon your arrogance and your multitude of desires, your posturing and your excessive ambitions. These are all of no benefit to your person. This is all I have to tell you." Confucius departed and said to his disciples, "I know a bird can fly, I know a fish can swim, I know an animal can run. For the runner, one can make a net. For the swimmer, one can make a line. For the flyer, one can make an arrow. But as for the dragon, I cannot know how it rides the wind and clouds to ascend to heaven. Today I have seen Lao Tzu. Is he not like a dragon?" In another part of the account, Sima Qian records a different side to Lao Tzu, connecting him to the figure of Lao Tzu. Quote, "Some say Lao Tzu was also a man of Qu. Eventually, Lao Tzu would be immortalized in one of the many stories of influential figures throughout history who were highly filial sons. The story of Xi Cai Yu Qin. He was known for being very filial to his parents. This is the story number 17. And quote, "During the spring and autumn period there lived a filial son named Old Master Lai, or Lao Tzu. From his youth, he had been most respectful and obedient to his parents. He obeyed their wishes and even took special care of their innermost thoughts. So concerned was his heart in serving them as a dutiful son, at age 70 he still earnestly made offerings to the elderly couple who had reached such a lengthy lifespan due to his filial devotion. He kept them warm in the winter, cool in the summer, and fed them soft foods that were easy to digest in their toothless mouths. Old Master Lai, wanting to keep his parents' spirits high, never mentioned the word old Lao in their hearing. When he overheard his friends lamenting one day, 'Look at our son, he's already in his dotage. Surely our own days must be drawing to a close,' his heart could not endure the helpless feelings that arose. 'I must find a way to lighten their hearts,' he vowed. Determined to keep his parents from lamenting over their increasing years, he hit upon a plan. Old Master Lai dressed up in a costume of a young child at the circus, and imitated the walk and manner of a mischievous boy at play. He would paint on comic opera makeup and carry a flower drum, horse-playing and cutting comic antics in front of his delighted parents' eyes. To tickle their funny bone, he would take a toy in hand and mimic a child's nonsense prattle, singing and dancing, falling in a heap, Sometimes he would carry a pole into the sitting room that balanced 2 full buckets of water. Singing a silly tune, he would trip up on purpose, sending water showering over the floor, and soaking his foolish-looking wig and face powder. His ridiculous show never failed to send the old folks into gales of laughter. Playing the fool always dispelled his elders' periods of melancholy and made them happy for days. Even though he was not a youngster, he was able to dutifully care for the physical health and well-being of his seniors. Lao Tzu's filial devotion impressed all who heard of it, and he received unreserved praise as an unusual example of perfect respect and proper affection. One gets the impression from this story of a very different Lao Tzu from the Lao Tzu of the Tao Te Ching, a man very concerned indeed with the Confucian concept of filial piety, something removed from the text that he is said to have produced. In a third possibility, Sima Qian places him later in the 4th century BC as the court astrologer Lao Dan during the reign of Duke Shen of Qin. His son, Duke Xiao, would go on to reform the Qin state with the help of Shanyang into a legalist war machine. Quote from the records of the Grand Historian, verse 6, 129 years after the death of Confucius, the historian of Zhou, Taishe Dan, had an audience with Duke Shen of Qin, saying, initially Qin and Zhou were united. After being united for 500 years, they separated. 70 years after the separation, a hegemon king will appear. Some say Dan was Lao Tzu, others say he was not. The world does not know whether this is true or false. Lao Tzu was a hidden gentleman. But in any version of this story, Lao Tzu, whilst in one form or another in the state of Zhou, and one of its vassals, the Qin dynasty out in the west, or as a keeper of the records in the state of Zhou itself, in either case, in all versions of the story, weary of the moral decay of the kingdom's decline, he decided to depart civilization for the western frontier. And as he reached the western gate at the Hangu Pass, a very significant pass in Chinese history, said to delineate the central plains of the east from the Guangzhong internal regions of the western state of Qin, and the mountainous and Loess Plateau regions, the Hangu Pass, he was stopped by a guard named Inshi. Quote, Inshi says to the old master, "Old master, you are going into retirement. I beg you to record your wisdom for the good of the world before you pass." The old master agreed, and he wrote a book in 2 parts exceeding 5,000 words on the concept of the Tao. This text was said to be the Tao Te Ching, and after delivering it, Lao Tzu passed through the gate and vanished, in some legends riding on the back of an oxen. After this, local legends have him living on Lao Junshang, literally Old Master Mountain. He was supposed to have lived a long life. Some records have him dying in around 471 BC. In Sima Qian's record of the Grand Historian, it states, quote, "It is said that Lao Tzu lived over 160 years. Some say over 200, because he cultivated the way and nurtured his longevity. No one," Sima Qian concludes, "knows where he died." Most contemporary scholars do agree that the Tao Te Ching might not be the work of a single author, but it was likely compiled by several different thinkers. The text itself is a collection of profound, riddle-like teachings on the nature of reality. It emerged in a time of endless war and chaos, where thinkers sought a principle of constancy, and they found it in the Tao, or the way, an ineffable, non-being force that is the originator and determinator of all things. Tao is a word also used by Confucius. He believed himself to be following the Tao, or the way, but in governance, not in retreating. The philosophy encourages alignment with this natural way through wu wei, or non-action, not to be confused with inaction or laziness, but effortless action that does not disrupt the natural balance. In a time of constant warring, one logical strategy is to retreat into the wilds, and this came to be personified in the man and the myth of Lao Tzu. So, who was Lao Tzu? The powerful, authorial voice of the Tao Te Ching seems to demand a personality. The historical truth may be that there was no single man named Li Er or Li Dan, or indeed Lao Tzu, who seems to be a very different figure, who wrote the book and rode away on a buffalo. This isn't to say that something like this didn't happen, but that events happened so long ago during an era of chaos, it is no wonder that such a man who did this would be hard to pin down with contemporary sources. The cultural truth is far more powerful. Lao Tzu is the old master, the symbolic father of Daoist thought. His life is a parable in itself. A wise man who's seen the world in chaos leaves behind only a cryptic text of sublime wisdom before disappearing into the mist, forever inviting us to ponder the way. Many wise men may have been taking this approach to life as a response to the crisis of the times. Instead of believing they could steady the ship and return to the Zhou like Confucius, they took to the hills. He never died because the idea he represents, the search for harmony with the fundamental nature of the universe, is eternal.